Hello everyone, and welcome to Python and VS Code tutorials. In this tutorial, we explain how to install Python from scratch on a Windows machine and how to run a Python script or Python code from the Visual Studio Code or VS Code editor. So let's immediately start. The first step is to download the Python interpreter. So how to do that? Open Google and search download Python. Download Python for Windows to be more precise. Okay, now click over here, or you can immediately just enter this address over here and you will see this main page. This is the official Python's page. Now, I made this video tutorial in July and the current Python version is 3.12.4 and we will install that version. However, in your case, the version might be higher. That is, this number might be 3.14 or something similar. So let's click on Download Python. And let's save Python in my Downloads folder. Okay, now let's open the Downloads folder. Click on Start, search for Explorer, File Explorer, click on the File Explorer, navigate to the Downloads folder, and over here in the Downloads folder, do the right click and run as administrator and click on yes. Okay, now here we will make several adjustments. First of all, let's add Python executable to path and let's use administrator privileges when installing Python. And let's install Python in this standard folder. My suggestion actually is to memorize this path. This is very important for some other project, so take some time and just write this path. This path will not be necessary in this video tutorial, however in the future video tutorials we might use this path. So click over here and just be patient. This will take some time. Okay, so after some time you will see this folder and this means that Python was successfully installed. Okay, so click on Close. The next step is to learn how to run Python from the Visual Studio Code editor. So let's learn how to do that. For that purpose, I'm going to open a new terminal window and I'm going to create a workspace folder and I'm going to run Visual Studio Code from that workspace folder. So click on Start, search for command prompt, here it is, and over here I will go to my D drive, since I like to create folders on my D drive, and I will create a folder called test1. Then let me go to test1, and inside of test1 I will start code. However, I'm going to start the Visual Studio Code with code dot. Again, to start the Visual Studio Code from a terminal we use code, and over here I will specify dot. Dot means that I want to make this current folder to be the default folder in my code session. So let's do that. And here we are. Okay. The first step will be to make sure that we have the necessary Python extensions. So we need to bring the extension window. There are several ways to do that. One way is to click on View and click on Extension. And here you can see the extensions and you can search. Another approach is suggested over here. So we press Ctrl, Shift, and H, and we come to extensions. Let me show you this again. I will click over here, then Ctrl, Shift, H, and we are in the extension. So search now for Python. And then click over here. First option. This is the Python extension for Visual Studio Code. This is a very important extension that will ease your life while writing Python code files in Visual Studio Code. So click on Install and be patient over here. This will take some time. Okay, now this extension is installed. Next, click over here and let's create our first file. There are several ways to create a file in Visual Studio Code. The first one is click on File and click on New File. That's one approach. Another approach would be simply to click over here Let me do it again, and you can click on this small icon over here, button, to create a new file. However, let's do the first step, file, new file, and over here type the file name. Let's call the file test1, and since we are going to create a Python file, let's type test1.py. Okay, and click on create file. And here's our test1.py file. Next, let's write our first Python file. Over here, I will write print, and simply inside my first Python file. Okay, so that's it. Next, let's learn how to run this file. Before we can run this file, we need to select the proper Python interpreter. That is, we need to select the executable file of the Python version that we just downloaded and installed. To do that, press Ctrl, Shift, and P. Again, I will repeat this, Ctrl, Shift, and P on your keyboard, and you will see this window. Now over here, search for Python interpreter, and you will see this. Oops, here it is. Click over here, and over here you have several options. You can see that the recommended option is actually in the path I told you to memorize at the beginning of this video. And I'm going to select this Python version. Okay, here it is. Now, there are several approaches to run this code. The first approach is to do the right click and then run Python and run Python file in terminal. Let's do that. And you can see in terminal, here it is, my first Python file. Okay, another approach, let me first close this terminal, is to click over here, and you can simply click run Python file, and here it is. And you can do it many times by just pressing this play button. Okay, close this terminal, and let's continue. The next thing that we need to learn is how to run a Python script from a Python virtual environment. But before we do that, let's explain the importance of Python virtual environments. Namely, a very good programming practice is to always develop your program or your Python script inside of the Python virtual environment. Roughly speaking, or loosely speaking, a Python virtual environment is a container that consists of the Python interpreter, that is, the Python executable file, and a set of packages. What is important about Python virtual environments is that once we install a package inside of the Python virtual environment, that package will only be valid inside of that virtual environment. That is, for example, if I install NumPy version 1.5 inside of my first virtual environment, NumPy package will only be valid in that virtual environment. On the other hand, if I create a new virtual environment and I try to use NumPy, NumPy will not be seen from that other virtual environment since it's only constrained to the first one. If I want to use NumPy in another virtual environment, I will again have to install NumPy in that virtual environment. This means that we can customize and precisely define packages and their versions and keep them inside the corresponding environments. That, in the long run, creates less errors, and we are avoiding conflicts between compatibility of different Python packages. So let's learn how to use Python virtual environments. So let's create our first Python virtual environment. To do that, press Ctrl, Shift, and P. Again, Ctrl, Shift, and P. And over here, search for Python create environment. And you can see that this option pops up. Click over here, and over here we have two options. The first option is to use the Python virtual environment. These environments are called VNV or VENV. And another option is to use the Conda environments. We are not going to create a Conda environment. We are going to use VNV environment. So let's click over here. And over here we need to select the proper interpreter. Remember, the environment consists of the interpreter and the packages. So let's click over here. Okay, and you can see that we are creating environment, and at the same time you will see that a new folder is created over here. This folder is our environment folder, and this folder precisely defines our packages. That is, not only packages, our complete environments. And you can see it has include, library, and scripts. And you can see over here that the environment is actually selected. Now, let's try to run this code inside of our environment. In previous versions of VS Code, you will see here a menu that will inform you, do you want to activate the environment? That is, before you can actually run this code in the environment has to be activated. However, in the newer versions of VS Code, it seems that there is no obvious information about is the current environment executed. That is it active? So let's first try to run this code. And you can see we run this code. Let me just clear this window. Oops, I didn't want to do this. So let me just clear. Okay, so let's run it again. And let's see the messages. So what is written over here? Nothing interesting. Okay, so this is very important. Now, how do we know that we are actually executing this code from the environment? Let's try to do the right click and run Python file in the terminal. Okay, over here I wrote a small script that will inform us if we are actually executing this code in the environment. Here, before I created a function, this function will return 1 or 0 if you're executing this file in the environment. That is if the environment is actually active while we are executing this file. And over here, to avoid errors, I also need to type import sys. Okay, so I'm importing the system, and here's my function. If I'm actually executing this code in the environment, this function will return 1. So let's do this, print, and let's print the output of this function. Good. Now let's call this function, and actually let's run the code, and let's see what will happen. Okay, the information is true. This means that we are actually running this code from the environment, and this is very important. That is, VS Code automatically activated the environment, and we are running this code from the environment. Another approach for activating environment is actually to execute this file, activate.bat. So let's do that. Let's try to execute this file. We can do that by specifying a relative path to this file. That is, we can write here environment, then scripts, then the name of the file. Okay, let's try this, and you can see immediately what happened. Now, over here I manually actually activated this environment, and you can see this red part over here. This means that the environment is actually activated. Okay, now let's run the code again. Run Python file in the terminal, and let's see the output. It's true. Okay, my suggestion is actually to do this approach, that is, run this file manually to make sure that your environment is active and that you're actually running this code from the environment. Okay, now let's make sure that we have packages installed in this environment, and if we don't have them, let's learn how to install packages. So let's type pip pipe list, and let's see what are the packages that we actually have. I can see over here that I only have pip, pipe, however you like to call it. However, I don't have other packages. For example, let's assume that we want to use numpy over here. Import numpy as np. And let's, over here in our code, let me just close this. In this code, let's, for example, use numpy. numpy.py divided by 3 is, for example, a. numpy.py is simply a pi number, and over here I'll print a. And let's try to execute this code, and let's see what will happen. So if I do the right click, run Python file in the terminal. Let's see what will happen. So what happened over here is that no module named numpy. So there is no module named numpy. So why is that? Well, when I type pip list, I can see that I only have pip package or pipe package installed in this environment, and I need to install additional packages. That is, I need to install numpy in order to be able to run numpy. So let's learn how to run numpy, or better to say, to install. To install numpy, we need to type pip or pipe install numpy. Okay, let's run this and let's see what will happen. And now you can see that the package is being installed. Now let me minimize this. And let's now again try to run this code. Okay, to run this code, do the right click, then run Python, and run Python file in the terminal. And here it is. You can see that we are actually able to use numpy. And that's how we install packages in an environment, and this is how we run files from the environment. Let's now deactivate the environment. If I type just deactivate over here, I made an error. It should be deactivate. You can see that we were able to successfully deactivate this environment since we are back in our base environment. And that's it.